David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a lot of people are looking at this story with Pathway and saying, boy, how people could have get sucked into that. How could people be involved in an organization like this? This is an organization, though, that you were a part of for a while. So how did you get involved?
All right, so all I basically got invited was, I left to work some time ago, back in 2012, and I had a female friend, and saw her on the lane. She said that she was heading to church, and she invited me, and that's basically how I ended up being there.
So how did you end up staying?
All right, so how I ended up staying at the time as well, I was basically trying to find a place of worship, right? I used to have dialogue with my parents saying that, I want better for myself. I wanted a better life, right? Which was to me at the time basically is choosing God, having a church, going to church and just trying to, live a good life.
How old were you at the time?
At that time, I was 17 years of age.
One of the things that one psychologist we interviewed has said that a lot of people join organizations like this because they want a family, they feel a need to belong. Did that play any
Right.
role in your staying with the church?
Um, you would say in a sense, because coming where I'm coming from, right? You would classify it as the inner city, right? So growing up, you're used to seeing a little bit of violence here and there, right? You wake up, you go outside, you see, youths out there rubbing out their hand middle, stuff like those. You understand? And wanting better, choosing to basically be in church was like a way out. Yes. And how everything transpired, basically it came off on you would say a positive light, so to speak. Yes. It came off as you being there, it's an inspiration, it's a way to literally make your life a bit better.
It sounds like a sanctuary, like it was
Right.
a
Right.
peaceful, an oasis away from your daily life.
Right, right. It was just like a regular Sunday church.
Was there anything at all that raised concerns for you? Because you say it was like a regular church, but we're now hearing these stories that don't sound like a regular church. So was there anything initially that sent up a red flag for you?
All right. So over time, yes. Over time, being there, things started to get a bit you'd say manipulative, right? Being there, I started to see things that, aren't really acceptable for me. Um, and that for one was some red flags you would say, and it's like you couldn't really say anything to the members, so to speak, because if you say anything to any other members, so to speak, they would basically probably chastise you, or of course kick you out of the church. And mind you, once you leave the church, everybody and them dog basically turn them back against you. You're like no enemy number one.
Let me start with the fact that you said things started to get manipulative. Tell me what you meant by that.
All right, so I was amongst several of the young men that was living at the location, right? No, to the church, it was basically him assisting us. No, yes, some persons were being assisted with financially going back to school, helping out, getting jobs in the church, right? That kind of assistance. No, over time, you want your personal freedom. You want to do your personality. You want to go out, have fun as a young man. You are being limited from that. drastically. So, that was where you would say the manipulation would come from, where that is concerned, from my experience.
Tell me what you mean when you said you were limited, your freedom was limited.
All right, so you want to go, for example, you want to go hang out with some friends. You want to probably go to the movies, stuff like that, and you would have to ask permission to go, and probably more likely is going to prevent you from basically going.
But you weren't, you were living on the compound or off?
No, I was living. We were living at his there. It was a 7-bedroom house at the time.
Okay, you said we. Who is we?
So there was several members, several males, right, that were living there. So basically, it was like you would say, a foster father type of scenario.
Okay, so what were there duties, for instance, that you were required to do? One of the things we've heard is that the young men around him used to do a lot for him.
Okay. All right. Some of the things would have been, one, assisting with church duties, right? Getting stuff prepared for church, cleaning the church, um, packing up the stuff that you would need to basically bring to church. And, those are some of the fundamental stuff.
What about personal duties for him? Whether assisting him or carrying stuff, or we've seen photos with somebody holding an umbrella over his head, or several of those.
Okay. All right. So yes, I'm aware of those situations as well. So persons would have, walk being on the road with him, persons would, walk, have the umbrellas, carry his backpack. Um, I personally as well used to sometimes sort out, finances of the ministry as well, because I was basically, there.
Some of that, though, sounds like stuff that maybe you would find in any organization with a hierarchy, with a senior and with junior people. I mean, junior lawyers, for instance, carry the bags of their seniors, just to give an example. So was there anything that actually made you say, hold on, something not right? Because you earlier said some things are not acceptable.
All right. All right. So there are instances, right, where the males of the institution, right, at the church, he would have, oftentimes tried to poison our minds against the females that are there, right? Saying that, if you leave woman alone, stuff like those.
What would you say was his and the church's general attitude to women?
Ooh, how would I say no? It was neutral. In one sense, it was neutral. Other than the young men, other than him telling the young men, leave X alone, leave Y alone, and then at the end of the day, infiltrate our minds saying that, hey, the girl that which still to the family there, that type of scenario.
And that would be about women who are actually in the organization?
Right.
Would you say then that he was controlling?
Right.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you to hold on. We're just going to take a break, do a little bit of business, and we'll come back. We're talking to a young man we're calling David. That's not his real name. He was a member of the church, the organization that's been in the news so much over the past few days, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, now just before the break, David, you were saying you agreed when I asked you if you would describe it as describe the pastor as controlling, and you agreed with that adjective, that description. How else did that controlling manner play out?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What else did he do that you would describe as controlling?
All right. So outside of that, as I was expressing, you were limited. You basically couldn't do the things that you want to do. Life was about just going to church, basically, right? You couldn't do anything. So if you work, probably the only thing that you can do is probably go work, come back home, and that's it, for us.
You said you were 17. Were you working at the time or in school?
I was working at the time.
So what would be the arrangements with the money you earn, for instance? Do you get to keep it? Do you have to hand over some of it? How did that work?
No. So primarily I was working at the church, right? I was offered a job there, and I was working at the church.
So what was the salary arrangement? Did you get one?
Yeah, the salary, I think at the time we were getting, a basic minimum wage, so to speak.
All right, so it wasn't a whole heap of money.
No.
So generally, what was the arrangement for finances in the institution? We've heard that people would have to hand over a certain amount, or in other organizations, we've heard that people sign over property. What happened in this institution?
All right. What I'm aware of is basically regular. Well, they have like pretty much, depending on the nature of the service. You have like different offering service. So you basically start off with $100 seed. Then you have $1,000 seed. Then after that, you would have a regular church offering and tithes segment. Then after that, you would have no, when the pastor or whomever finish preaches, it's called making covenant with the word, offering where you just randomly, or if requested, you go up and throw another form of seed, um, relatively. So in a night, or any given night, basically you would say it would have been like four different offering that was given in any given night.
And with a lot of money coming from that?
Pretty much.
Wow, like how much so?
Um, Rarely it would, on a average, at any given night, you can make over $150,000.
Okay. And how many nights a week was service?
It was on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, both morning and afternoon.
2 services for each of those days?
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday, okay. And on each service you would have 4 collections?
Yeah, depending on the nature of the service.
Okay, all right. So you said initially you were fine with it, but then later you said to feel uncomfortably, and you described the restrictions on your freedom. Was there anything else? How were people in the church treated?
I've seen where people, right, their own birth parents, basically they turn their mind against their own birth parent. You can imagine that. So seeing things like those, and as well being told not to visit my family, because I'm going to die, or this or that, those are some of the things that would basically you would have heard on a regular basis, where that is concerned, and that of itself basically would have put you into fear.
You said people could be turned against their birth parents. How would that happen?
All right, so one, primarily you would call you a witch, right? So no, mind you, you see the teachings that are given at the church, right? Once you're deemed as a witch to him, the entire church is against you, basically, right? It's like there's no redemption, right? So no, you as a person, probably have no idea what is happening, but you are told you're a witch, and that of itself just automatically just turn the people in mind against you. So I've seen where a son and a daughter heard that their mother is a witch, and entirely turn their back on their parent, their own blood parent,
Would these would
seeing that
these would these parents be parents who are in the church or not or
they,
outside?
they, they were a part of the church.
What I'm trying to understand though, I'm trying to understand, would these be parents who are, because you said these could be people who are in the church, the parents who are being called witches or whatever. So how would they be allowed to remain in the organization if they're viewed so negatively? If he has said that you're a witch,
All right.
would
So
they be then kicked out or they're allowed to stay?
all right. So once you're ever deemed a witch in the ministry, you're out of that place.
No, you said that you were being told not to visit your relatives because you would die. So when you first heard that, what was your reaction?
All right. So when I first heard that, it's now coming from a spiritual perspective, right? Spiritual perspective meaning, no, on average, at that ministry, the nature of the ministry is way different than any other ministry that I've ever witnessed and seen. So you have deliverance services, and deliverance services happen probably every other night or every night at the church. No, mind you, the deliverance service, you have you ever witnessed where somebody was possessed or has been possessed with an evil spirit, and the entire church has to be there trying to cast the evil spirit out of a person. No, in that ministry, it's just as though I'm sitting here on a chair. That's how simple it is for him. So you being at the church and hearing evil spirit coming out of people saying that, hey, me want to John Brown this, me want to John Brown that. If John Brown ever make a mistake and go around there, so you understand, he would be hurt, that type of thing. So it would then now come off as if you're not at the ministry, if you're not under his covering, you are a recipe for disaster then.
All right, so the idea would be, if I understand you correctly, that you were essentially being told and believed that if you went to visit your relatives and people not in the church, that you would end up being possessed by evil spirits?
No, not necessarily being possessed, but persons would have tried to hurt me,
Okay.
relatively.
Okay. So
But I
did
wouldn't.
your relatives then express any concern? Did they say, boy, David, me not like that, something your way in and you need to come out? Was there anything like that?
No, not necessarily. Why? Because as I mentioned, I was from the inner city, right? So I basically had some form of inner city behavior in a sense, right? Not fully, but from a perspective. And being in the church or being in the ministry at the time, I've became self-aware, you would say,
Okay.
right? So my languaging started to change.
Okay.
How I carry myself starting to change, starting to read books and so forth. So, I
So
was having,
looking at you, you look like you were improving yourself.
right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. So now tell us what led to your having to leave now. How did that come about?
All right. So, all right, me leaving, and for me, I left several occasions, right? I left several occasions. One was because of the family thing, just the same. If I visit my family, I would normally probably just keep it on the down low. Yes, until if he probably asked me, I would say. Secondly, it was due to as well. I was pursuing someone at the church, right? I was pursuing a young lady at the church, and he was against it, and for whatever reason, I don't know. You understand? But I didn't want to listen, right? So I was just being patient, doing what a male would have done to basically court a young lady, so to speak. And What else? Yeah, how would I say this now? I got tired in one sense. There was an occasion where I was being hit with an hose, yes, and not just me, but some of the other young men there as well.
Who was
You
hitting you?
understand?
Who was hitting you?
Him.
Was that something that happened regularly?
Um, in most cases, so for example, if he claims that you're lying to him, he would have hit you.
Okay. How severe would these hittings be?
All right, very severe. We're talking about a hose. No, the hose that is behind a washing machine, so to speak. Right? Yeah, I was behind a washing machine. I've had an experience where he thought I was telling him some form of lie, and I wasn't. But he hit me with the hose. My hands, was black and blue. My foot, black and blue, and yeah, and things like those were what triggered me to actually leave from the church.
So when you hear everything that went down over the weekend, what were you thinking?
For me, it conjured up a lot of emotions, I would say, and I can only imagine how the people that were there are feeling at this moment. Not to mention the person that was murdered and their family. It conjured up a lot of emotions, emotions that I never really get to deal with properly because, as I said, all those experiences and couldn't basically talk to anybody about it. Because once you say anything to any of the members at the church against him, you're public enemy number one.
I really appreciate your time and your frankness and sharing your story with us to help us to understand a little bit more about what's going on. Thank you so very much.
But appreciate it.